Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you live a better life right now. And now your host, Marco Salinas.
Welcome back to another episode of Business Innovators Podcast. I'm your host, Marco Salinas. Joining me today, a buddy of mine, Mr. Morgan Hoogvelt. Did I get that right, Morgan?
You got it right.
Close enough? All right.
Close enough, yep.
All right, good stuff. Morgan has a extensive background in the HR and recruiting space. And today we're going to talk about him and get to know him a little bit better and learn a little bit more about his journey as a business innovator. And he's also got a new venture that he's been working on here in recent years that is pretty cool and pretty exciting. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But overall, Morgan's a cool guy. He's got a cool story. And this is our opportunity to get to know him a little bit better. And as usual, we love to learn about business owners and we love to hear their stories and we love to learn about entrepreneurs and everything they've been through, because every entrepreneur has a different story and every entrepreneur has gone through some form of setback, some form of difficulty. It's never perfect. It's never rosy. And a lot of times when you talk to entrepreneurs, you see the end result of the fruits of all their hard work and all their labors, but you don't see all that they went through to get there. And so today we're going to talk to Morgan about his journey and all that he went through to get where he is today. So Morgan, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thanks, Marco. Appreciate you having me here. Really glad to be here.
Yeah. So like I said, I, for one, personally, I really love networking with other business owners and entrepreneurs because I love to hear about that journey. And I love to hear about how this all began and some of the things that you had to go through to get to where you are today. That being said, let's go back in time. Let's take the DeLorean and let's go back to the beginning of the process, right? Tell me a little bit about your early, the early part of your journey. How did you get into the HR space? Let's start with that. How did you, because this is what you've been doing the longest, how did you enter into that world? Tell me a little bit about what made you decide to go that route and how that kind of came about.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of an interesting journey there. I was actually right out of high school. I joined the military. I was lucky enough to get put through college through an RTC program. I ended up, being active duty in the military, and I got out and I had no clue what I wanted to do. And I always thought I wanted to be in some kind of finance. And so I joined this finance company down in Florida. And it really wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It's not what they kind of like told you at first in the interviews. It was really more just like a smile and dial job. And it just really wasn't for me. And so really the long story short, Marco, is I saw an ad in the newspaper one day. I don't know if most of your audience knows what newspapers are, but we used to read those back in the day.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of tells me how old I am. But I answered an ad in the newspaper. It was just a simple ad. It was about a company down in Sarasota, Florida, that was helping veterans transition from the military into corporate America, helping them find jobs. I had done it myself, and I was like, wow, I could do that. And so I called up, I spoke to a sales manager, and he invited me for an interview and hired me right on the spot. And so that was literally my start and what catapulted me into the quote unquote HR space. Now, the first job wasn't technically HR, but that's kind of like launched my taste of helping people find jobs, getting them prepared, kind of like quintessential, a little bit of recruiting. And so got into that space, did that for about a year, got a bigger job in recruiting. I did that for about 3 or 4 years here in San Antonio. And then, I think I struck gold where I was working with this company at the time, and they were, it's all trivial now, but at the time they were teaching companies like how to do recruiting and how to do recruitment communications. And they were doing like Facebook branded recruiting pages and stuff. At the time, this was cutting edge. Now everyone does it, knows how to do it. But anyway, I was doing a project for a very large radio company here in San Antonio for the VP of talent management, and he really liked my work, really liked what I was doing, and he offered me a position, and he really just catapulted me into a very large company, to a big position, and I've never looked back.
Wow. Man, that is cool. And so what branch of military did you were you a part of?
I was in the Navy.
You were in the Navy. Okay, got you. And what was your like what kind of work did you do in the Navy? Were you on a vessel of some sort?
Yeah, I was on an aircraft carrier. I was on a USS John F. Kennedy for most of my time. CV-67 down out of Mayport, Florida. It's mothballed right now. It's retired and it's sitting in the shipyards up in Philadelphia. But I was on an aircraft carrier for about 2 years, and it was a great time. A lot of hard work, but a great time.
Yeah, definitely. And you were in the military for about how long?
About 8 years.
Okay, got you. So you got your fair share of military time before you switched over to doing everything that you're doing now. But I'm sure it gave you that foundation that you needed to learn how to work and have a great work ethic and all that straight out of high school. You said, right? So that was a pretty quick transition for you right into adult life.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the only experience I've had, so I can't say it was the greatest and compared to other people's, but for me, it was the greatest. It was literally, you went from being 17 years old to graduating high school, turning 18, to going through boot camp, to landing on this, your tech school, to landing on this ship where there's grown men that are strangers, grown women that are strangers that, yeah, they kind of care for your well-being, but they're there to kick your butt and do work, get you to do the mission, right? And that's what it's about. And yeah, you learned a lot about yourself and how much you can handle, what you can take, and especially being on a ship. It's a whole different lifestyle. It's not living in an apartment down the street and going into a base every day. I mean, you're living in the middle of the ocean. And even during peacetime, you're in the middle of the ocean, and you miss birthdays, you miss family gatherings, you miss fun, you miss nights out, you miss all that stuff. All your buddies are living it up and partying in college or and doing whatever they're doing, and you're out in the middle of the ocean floating around. Right.
Yeah, no joke. Yeah, no, that's a good point. It is a sacrifice indeed, no question about it. But it shapes, obviously it shapes a big part of who you become, and it stays with you. You kind of never lose a lot of that, a lot of those principles and those things that you learned when you were doing that stuff. So
Absolutely.
That's why I like to point that out. Now, this was probably in the 90s, right, Morgan?
Yeah, I joined in 1995, and I got out in about 2000, the end of 2004.
Okay, gotcha. So early 2000s is when you made your exit out of the military and into that transition that you were just talking about. And so then what year did you start your own entity doing this? I think I'm looking at your LinkedIn, Morgan Human Capital Management. Is that right?
Right. Yep. So I started that in, never forget the date, November of 2013.
Okay, gotcha. So then you had done it for a while. You were working at the radio station. You were doing things for other people. And then you basically made that decision that, hey, you know what? I know what I'm doing. I do it pretty well. Why don't I do this for myself? Is that kind of the mindset that you went through that process, that thought process?
It kind of. I'm not afraid to say the story.
Walk me through that.
Yeah, not afraid to tell the story. I actually didn't make the decision for myself. It was made for me.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was working in that radio company, and I thought I was doing really well, and it was a great job. I really loved it. And they decided they didn't need me anymore. And it was October of 2013, and my wife was 8 3/4 months pregnant, about to have the baby, and I got laid off, and I didn't know what else to do. And it was tough to find a job right away. I was making decent money at the time, and I didn't really want to relocate, leave San Antonio, leave Texas, and so I just did the quickest thing that I could to make money that's most legal.
Yeah.
And that was recruiting. And I started my own little business, and I think I made my first placement about a month later, around the Christmas time frame, and just kind of never looked back. And I've been doing some consulting and even had some gigs with some companies in between them that just either they ran into me or they've liked what I've done in my work. And so, but I've always had my business going, and always just continued from that first day.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So it was one of those back against the wall scenarios, right? And
Yep.
you just had to make a quick decision and act, act swiftly, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And dive in head first is what it sounds like you really did. Now, once you got that first transaction there around Christmas time, did it just kind of start snowballing really quickly, or did it still kind of take a little while before it got some real traction? Tell me about, that, like, that first year. I like to emphasize when somebody starts a new business, a lot of them don't realize what they're getting their hands into, right? Like the first year, the first 2 years sometimes can be absolutely brutal. Talk to me about that first year. What was that like? Was it all perfect and smooth, or did you have some pretty heavy duty obstacles to overcome?
No, I wish it was smooth. It was not. It was tough. It still is tough. Every single day. It's never easy. But I think when you start off, it's tougher because I think people sometimes in these entities like the SBA and these different programs, they make it sound like, hey, this is what you need to do to start a business and get your business plan and just go out and do it. And I think,
That's right.
fact of matter is you can have like the greatest website in the world. You can have, a budget for marketing and all this other stuff. But the reality is like 99.99% of times, like no one's just going to come to you, right? Like you got
Right.
to go out and talk to people and you got to go find the business. And so, yeah, it's tough. And, you wish you're the only person out there, but there's a lot of competition as well. And so it was tough. It took me a little bit to get going. I think another 3 or 4 months. There's I think you fight through the self-doubt. You fight through is this what I really want to do? You fight through the times where you're not eating as good as you were when you maybe had a corporate job and you had the paycheck just coming in.
Yeah.
Well,
That's right.
you see all those things. I mean, I think it's just human nature. You see your buddies or your families on vacation. You're like, oh, I used to go with them. Now I can't. And so
Right.
I think there's a lot of sacrifices to be made and things like that. And then just your own family situation, as well. But I think, it just boils down to what you want at the end and what's important to you. And sometimes there's sacrifices to be made. And sometimes that there's always, in my opinion, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes it's just hard to get to. Sometimes it's blurry. Sometimes it may be very dim and you can't see it. But there's always a light. You just got to find out what that light looks like to you and just get yourself there.
That's right. No, you said it perfectly. And also, there's no reward without the risk, right? And so if you want to have that reward, you're going to have to take some type of a risk. And let's be honest, I mean, if you've got a nice little comfy government job or corporate job, you're probably making a comfortable salary. You can do pretty well for yourself, but you're never going to earn the type of revenue opportunities that somebody that's self-employed and taking big risks has the potential to make, right? It's just a different ball game.
It is a totally different ball game. And the funny thing is, like, I've heard along the way, like people sometimes will either talk to me or people that I know that worked in the same companies that are still there or maybe not there. And they always tell me, they're like, well, I couldn't do what you do. I need stability. And there's nothing wrong with having a corporate job. There's nothing at all. I've had them myself.
Sure.
You've probably had them.
Right.
I mean, we've all had them, right? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I just want to make that clear.
Sure.
Entrepreneurship is not for everybody, but fact of matter is there's no stability in corporate America. I mean, you work there, nothing's guaranteed unless you've got a contract, and typically those are reserved for executives. And you're at the whim of the corporation. One day they can just come in and say, hey, Morgan, well, like they did, right? I mean, it's happened to me a couple of times. Hey, everything's been great. We love you. You're awesome. Don't need you anymore. Have a nice life.
Sure. Yeah, 100%. No matter what you're doing, no matter how safe or stable you think it is, it's not necessarily going to be as safe or stable as you'd like to think. There's always a possibility that a memo can come down the line and then that's it. And so in a way, that's kind of a misconception, I think, about that world. But again, either way, though, it's pretty likely that you can jump into another job afterwards, and then it's like, all right, I got my stability and safety back.
Right.
And like you said, entrepreneurship's not for everybody, because you're going to have to take some pretty heavy duty punches to the gut. And you're going to have to be able to withstand those things, because they come at you a lot more often than they ever would if you were, working for somebody else. Because as an employee, it's not your problem. You don't have to worry about that stuff.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
When you're running your own thing, you're basically, you're in charge of every category for that business.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to stomach that stuff. And let's just be honest, the great majority of people are not going to be up for that, because it is tough.
Yeah.
It is brutal, actually, at times.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It is tough. It is tough. I have one of my best friends. He tells me all the time, he's like, man, I wish I could do what you do. And it's not like I'm Jeff Bezos, right? Where I've got like this $1 trillion company, and that he launched and started. I mean, I'm still a small businesses.
right.
He just tells me, I wish I had the nerve to do what you do. And I'm thinking like, man, like, yeah, I guess it is nerve wracking, but not everyone can do it. But it's also, sometimes I wish, I don't know if I wish I was here or not here, but I like what I do and I just continue to do it, so.
Right, right, yeah. We don't necessarily always have a ton of options on that, so we just got to keep charging forward.
Right.
All right. Well, tell me, Morgan, about your other business venture. You've got another company called Gohfr, and Gohfr has a really cool, unique spelling. It's Gohfr, Gohfr.
Yep.
And my understanding is this is a on-demand delivery platform that you started shortly after the pandemic, basically, is what you were telling me. You and I were talking on a previous conversation. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about Gohfr. What exactly does that service entail? And then tell me also that origin story.
Yeah. So Gohfr, for lack of a better term, we're like Uber, except we don't deliver people. We deliver packages. So for those that don't know about the courier industry, it's really archaic. And I'm not talking about like delivery for like, DoorDash and Uber Eats and things like that. I'm talking about like your traditional courier that services businesses. It's very, very archaic. And so I just had an idea back in 2015 of creating this platform for businesses where they can utilize smart technology on their smart devices and be able to just put in orders and have this network of drivers that be able to be available to pick up their items versus like this old traditional archaic courier model. I also thought a lot about around just simplicity and price transparency. Again, for those that don't know the courier business or industry, not all couriers are built this way, but the high majority of them, it's really hard to decipher a bill and get a right price on something. And with all these extra charges that they throw in and throw on top of you, a lot of companies that I find, a lot of businesses just don't like it. They like simplicity and transparency. So those are kind of my general ideas.
I see.
The way it got started, kind of funny story. It got started from me doing recruiting. I actually went to work in between my own company. This company hired me, and it was a really good opportunity. They were going to go, thinking of going public, all this other stuff. So there was a lot going on. I was doing a lot of work for them in my recruiting job, and then they hired me to come and get them in shape and take over their recruiting. And so I did. I said yes. And anyway, the long story short, Marco, is one of the businesses that I helped, one of the internal business units. They just had a lot. They had a lot of use of courier, but they always had significant problems with these couriers and getting something, delivered. They're like their packages and their items to their consumers. And so,
Sure.
literally, the way it started is this: one day I was sitting at my desk, and an HR business partner called, and she says, "Hey, I need someone to be available next Wednesday. I need you to hire me someone could be available next Wednesday. I can't pay them. I just need them to be available in case we call them." And I said, well, sure. Like, no one's gonna be around and just sit around not getting paid. I said, there's nothing I can do for you. Good luck. Hung up the
Right.
phone, and I just said, I think she would do well. That business would do well if they had a taxi cab for their service. And that was kind of like the idea. And so from there, I just went to work, put ideas on paper, and started building the blueprint for it, man.
Nice, nice. Yeah, and so it's kind of interesting though because you did launch this thing in 2020. I think just a couple of months after COVID started. So tell me, what was that like? Did that affect your business in any way with the shutdowns and everything that was going on at that time? Did it help it? Was it more of a boost to it, or did it make things a little more challenging?
That's interesting because I think I was kind of like everybody thought, right? Hey, this COVID thing, what is this? What's going on? What's going to happen? We all went through the lockdowns, so forth and so on. Those are kind of tough times to remember for a lot of people. I really didn't know what to think as I was going through this. And here I am, like, going to start this business thinking like, geez, it's like the worst time in my lifetime to start this business during this pandemic. But what I found was actually the exact opposite. I found that a lot of these other businesses in the similar same space,
Okay.
they pulled back
Mm,
and they didn't want to do anything. They didn't want to go to a hospital. They didn't want to, and I'm not kidding when I say this, they didn't want to go knock on someone's door or ring a doorbell because that's how much the public was thinking about COVID, right? And how it could
right. Yeah.
potentially spread. Like we just didn't know. We were just knew what we were
Absolutely.
being told. And so anyway, I said, hey, I found a group of people that said, hey, we need to work. We're going to go and work and we'll do whatever's necessary to work. And of course, we'll be safe and take precautions and all those other things and follow, all the rules and the regulations that were out. And we did. And a lot of these customers, they were grateful for that because if you think about it, they're their businesses. They needed still to get whatever their product was, they needed to get it out. And so, yeah, like during the height of COVID, we were going into hospitals, we were going into nursing homes, we were going to people's homes for all kinds of different products, medical device, food, documents, whatever people needed to get out and to get, we were delivering it.
Yeah.
So that's how it started, and it started well for us while people were pulling back. And I think a lot of our customers still remember that.
Yeah. So, and again, another kind of blessing in disguise in many ways for you during that time period, because I think your services were actually very much needed, probably more than ever at that time.
Yeah.
And so that gave you that opportunity to kind of jumpstart that thing when others were kind of sitting on the sidelines and just like, I don't know what we're going to do here, but you guys were out there doing it, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So you've had this, you've had Gohfr for about 4 years. You've been running that officially, right?
Yes.
And then you've had your HR business for, over a decade now. So, you've got a pretty good amount of time here in this world, in this space of being self-employed and entrepreneur. So here's a question that I like to ask. So with all of this experience and given all your success that you've had, what challenges though are you working to overcome in those businesses today at this point? What kind of challenges do you see in this crazy economic climate? It's a crazy world that we're living in right now, and it's made things even more difficult for the small business owner. So what are you seeing? What challenges are you working towards right now overcoming?
I think for me, speaking only for myself, there's a couple different challenges. There's like your personal challenges, and then there's like what the world gives you, those challenges, right? So
Sure.
personal challenges for me, Morgan, number one is time. I think that's probably a big one for everybody, right? It's just I'm no different than anybody else. It's probably time, right? It's I don't wish, but I guess as a business owner, you wish it was just you and that's it, and you can dedicate all your time and do whatever you needed. But the reality is, I'm still husband, I'm still dad, I still got these other things, to take care of. I still have a family, and you can't just get swamped down into your work. I mean, some people can, and that's what they want, and that's fine. That's not what I want for myself and my family. So I try to have that time balance, but there's always time. That's a limiting factor. I think the second challenge for me, Morgan, is I'm not a control freak, but man, when it's your business, it's hard to let go. It really is. I find it still hard to let go on certain things. And it's hard to find good people sometimes that really have that care about your business the same way you do, and that care about your clients the same way you do. And so I find myself trying to do everything, trying to be the CEO, trying to be the CFO, the COO, the delivery guy, the sales guy, the accountant, the web guy. I mean, it's just like, the marketing guy. And you only have so many hours and so many days, and you can't do it all. And at the same time, you're dealing with, then those economic challenges that come in like on the outside. So those are my two big ones for myself. But then there's the economic challenges, right? I mean, we've had some customers that, a year ago, 2 years ago, they were blowing and going, where we were doing, hundreds of deliveries a week for them. And they've scaled way back because of their own economic challenges, right? That kind of trickles down to us. So, I can go out and find somebody, or I can go out and find vendors, but as you know, vendors aren't cheap. Everybody wants, a year's agreement or to have some kind of longevity. And sometimes it's expensive. So those are the big challenges for me, Marco. It's really just trying to, balance my life, let go of some stuff to, when I can, but also then just make sure it's the right people. And then at the same time, just really continue to grow the business and really partner with my customers through their economic challenges as well, with, being a good partner for them.
Absolutely, man. No, I think everything that you brought up, Morgan, is very relatable to the majority of business owners. We tend to want to hold on to control of things because we know that others are just not going to put the same level of dedication or effort into it typically, and so sometimes it's challenging to say, well, let me go ahead and let go of that and let somebody else do it. And then you see that it's not being done quite the way that you wanted to. And you're like, oh, you know what? Let
Yep.
me just take that back.
Yeah.
So, but then that cycle kind of continues, right? Because a big part of our goal here is a big part of the reason why most people become business owners is that they crave that freedom. They want freedom. They want flexibility with their time.
Yeah.
And so as a general rule, we do get that. We are given that as a big gift as far as all this that we go through and everything that we're doing. If we need to stop and we need to spend time with the kids or we need to go check out one of their events or what have you, usually you can make that happen, right? But the key is to be able to get to a point where maybe you can actually step away for longer periods of time and then be able to walk back and then the machine is still running.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And also to be able to have it where you're not getting bugged or text messaged by people on your team or what have you the whole time that you're trying to enjoy, your time with your family or what have you. Right.
Yep.
You want to be able to turn it off from time to time. And that's one of the more challenging things as business owners, because of the fact that we feel like we sometimes need to retain control of a lot of those things. So definitely relate to that, Morgan. No question about that. And it's one of the biggest, I think, obstacles for any business to overcome. And so it's something that just has to be kind of worked through. And but it's definitely possible. I mean, we see it happen. You get the right person on your team, and they can make a big difference. And those people, hard as they may be to come across, they're out there.
Oh yeah.
And so
absolutely.
No question about that. Now, here's a another one that I think is really important question. Did you along this pathway? I mean, you could go back to even when you were a kid, but what was, I guess you could say, the best advice that you ever received from someone? Maybe, or even if you have to share one or two things that somebody told you, a mentor, a leader, it could be your own parent, a friend, doesn't matter. What advice were you given in life that you think kind of you still think about to this day, or maybe you still live and try and implement that advice to this day? Is there anything that you were given, any kind of golden nugget like that at any point in time?
There's a couple things that stand out to me. So the first one, it was visual advice, if that makes sense. This man never said a word to me about, how to run a business or what to do. He just always let me find my way. But that's my dad. So my dad actually immigrated to this country when he was about, I think, 11 years old. And he started working, and he was living in Los Angeles, and he started working for the California Gas Company. And he did that for about 2 years. At 20 years old, he decided to go on his own. The man's 76 years old, and he's never worked for anybody else in his life.
Nice.
Never.
Yeah.
And he never sat there and talked to me about entrepreneurship. He just wasn't, he's a great father. He still is. But that just, it's just nothing that he just always preached. Hey, go get a college education, go do something, different than I do. So you don't have to work as hard as he does every single day. Right. So he was in the construction business, and man, it was a great life for him. He always took care of us financially and everything we needed.
Right.
But the visual advice that he gave me, just I think back on it, I'm like, man, this man never worked for a person in his entire life after starting at 20 years old. And
Wow.
he's always hustled the streets. He's always did whatever he's needed to do to get jobs. I mean, one example is when I moved to Texas in 2006, and my dad moved out with us, and he left his whole business behind and the area that he knew and all this other stuff. And I was just like, well, what's this? What's he going to do? This is kind of odd for him. And I'll tell you what, within a week he was ready. I'd go outside. He's working on the neighbor's house. And it was then it was the next neighbor's house. Then it was the next neighbor's house. And now I wake up every single day since for the last 20 years, and his trucks at different houses in all the different neighborhoods.
I got you. Man.
That visual advice just tells me, hey, you got to go out and talk to people. You got to introduce yourself. And that's who my dad is. He just goes out. He's approachable. He has conversations. He's nice and he's friendly. And people trust him. And, they trust him a little bit different than me just selling them something. They trust him to come into their homes. They trust him to fix things in their homes. They can have kids in there. They can have their personal items, all that stuff. And so, he does all that stuff. And to me, just visually seeing it and thinking about it is always it's just mind blowing to me because, he's not a millionaire. He's not, an Amazon or something like that. He's comfortable at what he's always done. But to me, he's just always done it really well and just survived anywhere and worked hard. So those are the things I visually took away from him. You just got to put in the effort. You got to go out and talk to people, and you got to be my dad with that little red truck everywhere in the neighborhood, and the word just spreads, right?
Sure.
And the second piece of advice, it came to me via Inc. magazine. No one ever told me this, but those aren't familiar with Inc. magazine. It's an entrepreneurs magazine. And somebody turned me onto it years ago, and I subscribed to it. And I think one of the first magazines that I got, it talked about this concept. It was called Minimal Viable Product, MVP. And I always had that thought in my mind, but I didn't truly understand what it meant until this article summed it up for me. So I think, one of the biggest things that I try to share with other people, and I just shared it with another friend of ours who's on my son's soccer team, who she wanted to start her own little business, and she heard I was a business owner. She's asking me for advice. And so I started mentoring and coaching her along, just kind of things that I've done and how to start the business, how to register it, all those other good things. But I showed her the MVP concept. And, it's people have this, when they start a business, they have this mindset where they want to go out and they want to spend $10,000 on a website, and they want to spend, $20,000 or more on a new car, and they want to spend, I got to have office space and all this other stuff. And, the reality, Marco, is your customers don't care about that.
Right.
Nobody cares about where you're working. Nobody cares about your website. Nobody cares about, the car that you're driving and all that stuff. What your customers care about is, hey, you told me you're going to do a job. This is the service that you offer. Are you going to do it for me? I've never, I have, luckily and blessed, I have a couple clients that are household names in the United States. And not one time has any of them ever come to me and said, hey, where's your office? I want to see it.
Right.
What's up with your website? This is a mid-grade. I need to see a high grade. They don't care. They just love the service, and we execute every single day for them. So those are the two pieces of advice. The visual advice is, hey, man, go out and get it. The second piece is that minimal viable concept. Don't spend
I love that, man.
money. Go with the very basics to get going, so you don't go broke yourself, and then see where it goes.
Yeah. No, man, those are two huge golden nuggets that you just dropped. Dad is all about, taking action. I could summarize your dad as actions speak louder than words, basically, rather than sitting there and telling you, the guy just does it.
Yep.
And you saw it, and you continue to see it. And it's kind of guys like him, especially, man, God, I love especially talking with immigrants. Oh my God. I mean, these people have zero excuses, man.
Yep.
Zero excuses. Whereas the longer that you've been in the US, the more comfortable you are, the bigger your list of excuses,
Yeah.
And so these people will come and just work circles around, the majority of people. So that's always, I may have to have your dad on the podcast one day, but in addition to that, you've also got, this MVP, man. I mean, that's just really sharp. It's just focus on the meat and potatoes of this thing, get it done, get what people need, and don't get so caught up in all the little trivial things. People are like, oh, I got to get the logo just right. And right. I got to make sure I got this registered with the secretaries. Again, those things are necessary at some point, but people tend to get too wrapped up in it.
Yeah.
And instead, they should just be focusing on providing a quality service or product that meets the needs of their end user, right? And that's basically what you were explaining with the MVP concept. So, really good stuff. And I really appreciate everything that you've shared, Morgan. As we get ready here to start winding down this podcast episode, I want to kind of transition over to a lighter subject matter. So when you're not out here hustling and you're not out here grinding, what does your downtime look like? What do you do for fun? And who do you spend that with typically?
Yeah, I know. Thanks for asking that. So, oh man, I think fun. Morgan's fun is selfishly for myself. I love to play golf. I try to go out there and play golf as much as I can. As much as I can seems like it's once a month, but I'll take anything that I can get. Right. I just love to go out and play anytime I can. I love to go and I shoot a lot too. So I love to go out and exercise the Second Amendment and get out there in a safe environment, like in a target area or something, a shooting range and shoot and just, it's always fun to go out there and just challenge yourself to be accurate. And I love to do that. Away from my own personal things that I like, I've got a wife and 3 boys. I've got one out the house now, but still a big part of our lives, obviously. And so it's cool just to spend time. We try to get out. He's actually in the Space Force and he's stationed out in Los Angeles right now. So we get out to Los Angeles about once a quarter to visit him and spend time.
Awesome.
And, eat some good food and take in the sights and all that other stuff. And we still have a lot of family out there. That's where we're originally from as well. So we get out there and visit them, and lucky enough for him to be stationed there with everybody. And then locally, it's just, I got 10-year-old and a 2-year-old. And so they take up a lot of time as well. And, we're summer camps. We're trying to give them their life experiences, whether it's, small parks or small trips to state parks, local parks, to the rivers. We take in a lot. So we just try to do a lot of family stuff as well and just keep active and give them good experiences so they can grow their little lives and see some different things.
Yeah, that is awesome, man. That is so cool. Morgan, it's been great getting to know you better. You've got a really amazing story, man. Really impressive. Both of these companies that you're running. You're still definitely, you're still in the trenches, man. I mean, you're going through it every single day. You're running it, the highs and the lows, which is what that entrepreneurial spirit is all about. And that's what we do. We continue on and try to make it work. And each day is a new day. But the cool thing about what we do is also each day kind of brings a unique challenge and a unique opportunity to us, right? Yep. So that's a big part of what keeps us going is the excitement of those opportunities that are there. Sometimes it's something really good. Sometimes it's a setback, but you know what? We're just built to keep going and we keep rolling. And that's what we do as business innovators. So
yep.
Thanks again, Morgan, so much for being a part of this. How can our listeners and viewers learn more about you if they want to follow your journey?
So I think, I'm always available on LinkedIn to answer questions, to give advice, or my own, learning experiences and failures and all those other good things. So I'm always on LinkedIn. You can catch me there. It's Morgan Hoogvelt, Hoogvelt. You can also go to morganhcm.com, or you can also go to Gohfr, Gohfr.com as well.
Good stuff. Oh, and I'm going to give you a quick plug. About a little over a decade ago, you had your own radio show on terrestrial radio. And I listened to a clip of it, man, and it was a really cool, exciting, fun format that you had set up there. But you have recently decided to kind of resurrect that in a sense, but now more so as a podcast. So that's something that people should look out for as well, right? It's something that you're working on behind the scenes right now. Yeah,
it's behind the scenes, and also, thank you for that plug. But I have to thank you, for the advice, for the listening to that episode and giving me the feedback. It's, I guess, again, sometimes it's been so long, you doubt yourself a little bit and think about, hey, can I do it? Will anybody find this interesting? So I appreciate the feedback. And yes, we're working on it behind the scenes, and hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we can get 1 or 2 episodes live and just kind of take it from there. So we're excited.
That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. Well, I think your future definitely looks bright, Morgan. Keep at it. Keep doing what you're doing, and keep on innovating. And thanks so much again for being on our podcast today.
Okay. Thank you, Marco. Appreciate the time.
Absolutely. And that does it, guys, for another episode of Business Innovators Podcast. We will catch you here next time.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Podcast with Marco Salinas. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry innovators and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.